Traveling to the primitive world, cultivating land, taming animals and raising fish, building houses. Jiang Xuan wants to build his own tribe with his own hands. Keywords of the novel. This is my original tribe without a pop-up window. This is the complete download of my original tribe TXT, and this is the latest chapter reading of my original tribe. Chapter 1. Terrifying Primitive Jungle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Terrifying Primitive Jungle. Another world, primitive continent, Nanhuang Mountains. Xian, hold on, we'll be able to escape soon. In a daze, Jiang Xuan heard the voice of a young girl in his ear. He struggled to open his eyes and saw a primitive forest covered in towering ancient trees and old vines. Jiang Xuan found himself lying on the back of the young girl, who was running quickly, causing him, who was already unconscious, to feel uncomfortable and bumpy. At the same time, there was a continuous tingling sensation in his chest, and there was obvious bleeding, indicating that he had suffered a considerable injury. Jiang Xuan, who was in a daze, closed his eyes. After an unknown amount of time, the panting girl finally stopped and placed him under a big tree. Xian, open your eyes and look at me. Don't scare my sister. The call of a young girl came from his ear, and Jiang Xuan struggled to open his eyes again and saw a young girl wearing a fur coat with a panicked expression. Where is this? Who are you? Jiang Xuan really wanted to ask, but he found that he no longer had the strength to speak. Wait for me here, I'll find some herbs to stop the bleeding for you. The girl hurriedly ran away, leaving Jiang Xuan lying motionless on the ground, looking at this unfamiliar world and smelling the strange smell of grass and blood mixed together. What's going on here? Jiang Xuanming remembers that he only took a nap while working late at night. Why did he end up here? Is it a dream? Suddenly, he felt a whirlwind and his mind was filled with a pile of information. It took him a while to recover and digest this information. Firstly, he traveled through, and also into the extremely dangerous primitive world. Originally a 12-year-old boy named Xian, he was a member of a primitive small tribe. The girl was his sister, 1 year older than him, named Qishao. Primitive people didn't pay much attention to naming, they chose whatever they thought of. Xian, in the tribe represents reddish-black and also represents rope, because this word looks like a woven rope. Red peony, on the other hand, is the name of a herb with no other meaning. Secondly, their tribe had just been conquered by hostile tribes, and their parents used their lives to cover up for Qishao and Xian's escape. In the battle, Xian was stabbed with a spear by the enemy, and Qishao ran away on his back. In fact, halfway through the run, Xian died from his severe injury. Coincidentally, at this moment, Jiang Xuan crossed over and received everything from him. The mysterious power of time travel temporarily saved his life, but if the bleeding cannot be stopped or the wound is severely infected, he will still die. Jiang Xuan was no longer able to complain about this tragic situation, and the most important thing now was how to save his life. Sha sha sha. At this moment, Jiang Xuan suddenly heard a continuous voice. He turned his head, his face stiffened, and a look of fear appeared in his eyes. I saw a giant centipede over half a meter long, seemingly smelling the smell of blood, quickly crawling towards him. This centipede is red all over its body, many times larger than the centipedes he has seen before. Its armored body, cold eyes, sharp mouthparts, and hooked 100 feet all make one's scalp tingle. It's over. Do we have to die here right after crossing over? Jiang Xuan watched as the ferocious centipede crawled closer and closer, with its venomous glands and teeth constantly opening and closing. As soon as it approached, it would penetrate Jiang Xuan's body and inject venom, and Jiang Xuan would undoubtedly die. No no. Jiang Xuan felt that his blood was almost frozen, and he made a faint sound from his mouth, but he couldn't stop the centipede, which was over half a meter long, from continuing to approach. Just as Jiang Xuan was falling into despair, suddenly a short spear flew over with a whoosh, piercing through the back of the centipede and firmly nailing it to the ground. At this point, the huge centipede was less than 30 centimeters away from Jiang Xuan. If this short spear were to slow down a bit, he would be dead. "Xian, are you okay?" Qishao hurriedly ran over, holding a handful of herbs in her hand. She walked up to the centipede that was nailed to it with a short spear, disregarding its twisting body. She accurately stepped on the centipede's head with one foot, then pulled out a sharp stone knife from her waist and cut off the head of the large centipede with one blow. Ha! Jiang Xuan took a deep breath and finally managed to temporarily save his life. He was really scared to death just now. The body of the centipede is still wriggling slightly, but it is impossible to sting people again. Jiang Xuan looked gratefully at the red peony, thanks to this sister saving his life. "I'll apply medicine to you first." Red Peony put those herbs into its mouth and chewed them quickly. After the herbs were thoroughly chewed, she untied Jiang Xuan's beastly fur coat and applied the chewed herbs to his wound. It's strange to say that after applying these herbs, Jiang Xuan's wound felt a cool sensation, and the bleeding rate gradually slowed down. Qishao opened the animal skin bag hanging from his waist again, took out a white spider web-like cotton cloth, sealed the wound with herbs, and then helped him put on the animal skin jacket. "It's not safe here, sister will take you to find a safe place." After treating Jiang Xuan's wound, Qishao put the chopped-off centipede into a beast skin bag, then picked up Jiang Xuan and continued running. On the way, Jiang Xuan witnessed many animals and plants that made people's scalp tingle. For example, a spider as big as a basin, a scorpion as big as a watermelon, a praying mantis that can cut off branches as thick as its arms, and so on. Even plants are not good crops. Jiang Xuan saw a bird approach a bright flower with his own eyes, and its thorny petals instantly closed, turning the bird into flower fat. If it were watching a documentary, Jiang Xuan would definitely find these animals and plants very interesting, but when he was there, all he felt was fear. The primitive forests of this world are extremely dangerous, and any slight carelessness may lead to death. Red Peony's physical strength exceeded Jiang Xuan's imagination. Carrying him on my back for 3 or 4 hours, I had to avoid various dangers during this time, but Qishao still maintained a steady pace and breathing. It wasn't until evening that Qishao found a cave and finally breathed a sigh of relief. The cave is not deep, there are many dry firewood inside, and there are some ashes and charcoal on the ground. Obviously, someone has started a fire here before. There was still a pile of hay on the ground. Red Peony first flipped over the hay, carefully checked it, and found no hidden poisonous insects before spreading it out, allowing Jiang Xuan to lie on top of the hay. "It's getting dark soon, my husband is angry." Qishao found a relatively hard wooden stick from the dry firewood pile, a relatively soft piece of firewood with a groove in the middle. She sharpened one end of the wooden stick with a stone knife and placed it in the groove of the firewood, rubbing it quickly. Jiang Xuan has watched many outdoor survival programs in his past life. He knows that this is called the fire plow method, which relies on friction to generate heat, produce sparks, and then light a fire pile. Qishao rubbed and explained to Jiang Xuan, "I used to go hunting with a hunting team. If I couldn't go back at night, I would stay here all night. There are several places like this." Cha-cha-cha. Under the friction of the red peony, many small wood chips were scraped out of the grooves of the firewood, and the end of the stick became burnt black. A small wisp of smoke rose up, and Qishao put down the stick, picked up the piece of wood with both hands, and gently blew air inside. A Mars rapidly burned, igniting fine sawdust and forming a spark. Qishao grabbed a few dry mosses, kneaded them into a large ball, and then used a stone knife to pick the flame into the dry moss, slowly blowing air. The moss emitted a large amount of thick smoke, followed by a sudden burst of flames. Qishao quickly placed the burning moss on the ground and then added small dead branches. After the small dead branches were ignited, she added larger ones. Soon, a pile of fire rose up, illuminating the cave. Qishao went outside the cave to find a fresh branch, used a stone knife to cut off the fork and outer skin, returned to the cave, poured out the half-meter-long centipede from the animal skin bag, strung it whole with the branch, and grilled it next to the fire. When a centipede is alive, it is toxic, but when it is roasted, it becomes a non-toxic food that can be eaten. The shell of a centipede makes a popping sound, and the meat inside quickly emits a fragrance when grilled at high temperatures. After the big centipede was roasted, the red peony peeled off its shell, tore off the centipede meat, and handed it to Jiang Xuan's mouth. "Eat it, eat more, the wound will heal quickly." Jiang Xuan was injured and hadn't eaten anything for half a day. He was already starving and smelled the aroma of meat. He didn't care if it was a centipede or anything else, so he opened his mouth and ate. Half a centipede fell down, and Jiang Xuan felt like he was coming back to life. You also eat." Jiang Xuan struggled to speak in the language of the tribe. Qishao smiled and nodded, eating all the remaining centipede meat. She must maintain sufficient physical strength in order to better protect Jiang Xuan. After eating the centipede meat, Qishao fed Jiang Xuan some water, changed the medicine once, and then found many thick and withered trees to block the entrance of the cave to prevent wild beasts from entering in the middle of the night. After everything was done, Qishao sat next to the fire, Jiang Xuan lay on the haystack, and the firewood was burning with a crackling sound. When busy, there is no time to think too much. Now that I have free time, my mood suddenly rises. Qishao looked at the dancing flames and whispered, "The tribe is gone. What should we do in the future?" Jiang Xuan struggled and said, "Big. No big deal, we'll rebuild a tribe." Qishao smiled, but did not speak. How could it be so easy for the two of them to establish a tribe in this dangerous primitive forest? New book update. Thank you all for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Herbal Healing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Herbal Healing. That night, Jiang Xuan didn't sleep very peacefully. From time to time, terrifying animal roars, strange bird calls, and the sounds of various insects can be heard outside, making people fearful. Qishao was afraid of being attacked by fierce beasts at night, so she persisted in guarding for most of the night. It was almost dawn when she took a nap. The next morning, when Qishao woke up, the fire had already gone out. She dug out the still simmering charcoal from the ashes and reignited the fire. When the red peony lit the fire, Jiang Xuan also woke up. Qishao stood up and said, "I'll go around and find something to eat. Wait for me here. Pay attention to safety. Don't worry." Qishao went out with a stone knife and a short spear, and quickly walked away. There was only Jiang Xuan left in the cave, with a burning flame. Jiang Xuan raised his hand and found that he had regained some strength, at least not as difficult to speak as yesterday. He was worried about the condition of the wound, so he gently uncovered the spider webs and medicine residue covering the wound. The situation is much better than he expected. The wound has closed, although there is no scab, there are no signs of inflammation. This is good news. He hopes the wound will heal soon and his mobility will be restored as soon as possible. Jiang Xuan bandaged the wound again and lay down peacefully. However, he waited for a long time and Qishao did not come back. During the waiting time, he began to involuntarily daydream. This jungle is so dangerous, what should Red Peony do in case of an accident? What if I can't come back? He was injured so badly that he had no ability to take action. If there was an accident with Qishao, he could only wait to die. Sha sha sha. Just as Jiang Xuan was getting more and more scared, a very light footsteps suddenly came from outside, and the figure of Qishao appeared. Jiang Xuan breathed a sigh of relief and said, "You've come back. I caught a snake and found some herbs, which took me a bit longer." Red Peony carried a snake on her shoulder, which was very large and as thick as the mouth of a bull. The snake head has been cut off, the abdomen has also been cut open, and all the intestines have been cleaned. Jiang Xuan once again exclaimed. Women from primitive tribes are really too fierce. I'll have grilled snake meat today. Qishao peeled a thicker branch again, cut the snake into sections with a stone knife, strung them on the branch, and then inserted the branch into the ground next to the fire. The snake's flesh was about 10 centimeters away from the flames. Barbecue cannot be grilled directly on flames as it will burn. Tribal people usually skewer meat on wooden sticks, place it next to a fire, and do not directly contact the flames. They use the overflowing high temperature to slowly roast it. The only drawback is that the baking time is relatively long. After finishing the snake meat, Qishao opened her animal skin bag again and took out a handful of freshly picked herbs from it. Qishao still chewed up the fresh herbs in her mouth, and then replaced the old medicine from Jiang Xuan's wound. Later, she handed Jiang Xuan 2 plant roots and stems, allowing him to chew some juice and swallow it himself. This plant is a healing medicine commonly used by tribal people, called 7-leaf grass. Its roots have anti-inflammatory and analgesic effects. Jiang Xuan learned from his predecessor's memory that he had taken this medication several times before without any adverse reactions. Jiang Xuan put the roots and stems of the 7-leaf flower into his mouth and chewed them, almost not spitting them out directly. Bitter, extremely bitter, it is a torture to the tongue. However, this is the primitive era, and there are serious injuries on his body. Even if it is painful, he can only endure it. Qishao looked at him with a soft gaze and said, "It's a bit bitter, endure it. Once the wound is healed, there's no need to eat." Jiang Xuan nodded, indicating that he would take his medicine well. "By the way, sister, how could you know so many herbs?" Jiang Xuan was curious about this. They all learned from the people in the hunting team. Qishao explained, when going hunting, the members of the hunting team often get injured. If you encounter a situation where you are injured and alone, knowing more herbs can save your life. So it's like this. Jiang Xuan suddenly realized that this was what it means to become a good doctor after a long illness. After Qishao finished speaking, she fell silent again, obviously thinking of the tribe and family. Jiang Xuan saw that she was feeling uncomfortable, so he didn't want to ask anything more. The snake meat was grilled for about an hour until it turned golden brown. The red peony was then taken down and half of it was given to Jiang Xuan, and he ate half himself. Roasted snake meat doesn't have any seasoning or fat, but for the 2 people in need, having meat to eat is already great and there's nothing to be picky about. So, Jiang Xuan lay in this cave for 10 days in a row, and the red peony went out every day to search for food and herbs. Sometimes it went smoothly, and sometimes it got a little injured. The tribal people in this world are physically strong and have strong recovery abilities. 10 days later, Jiang Xuan can now walk down to the ground after regaining his mobility. Jiang Xuan couldn't wait to move around the cave entrance in a small area. He hopes to adapt to this wild and primitive world as soon as possible, so as to cope with various dangers in the future. 5 days later, Jiang Xuan's injuries were no longer serious, and he began to try setting up some lasso traps near the cave to catch small prey. His trap succeeded, but what he caught was not a bird or a rabbit, but a green bug the size of a teacup. When he walked over, the insect was tied to a thin vine around its waist, and the bouncing branches pulled it into the air, causing its plump body to wriggle back and forth. Can this thing be eaten? Although some experts have been emphasizing that insects of the same volume have 4 times the protein content of beef. But this thing doesn't look like a delicacy, and from a sensory perspective, it's not as easy to accept. But this is food, and also the first prey captured by Jiang Xuan in this world, he doesn't want to let go. Jiang Xuan untied the vine from the branch and returned to the cave with the plump insect, intending to ask Qishao when she returned. However, just as he was waiting, he suddenly heard the cries of a group of crows. Gaga gaga. The piercing crow cry made Jiang Xuan involuntarily nervous. Because he learned from the memories left by his original body that it was the Crow tribe that destroyed the tribe where Xian and Qishao were located. This crow's cry is like a nightmare for the original body. The Crow tribe has more than 3,000 people and raises a large number of crows. These crows can help them scout in the air, as well as hunt and fight, which is very brutal. Sha sha sha. A rapid sound of footsteps came from outside the cave, and Jiang Xuan nervously grabbed a wooden stick before hiding in the dark. Xian, Xian. At this moment, the call of Red Peony came from the cave entrance, and Jiang Xuan quickly ran out. Qishao's expression was very tense and she urged, "Hurry up, the hunting team from the Crow tribe is here. We can't stay here anymore. Wait a moment, there's still something in the hole." Jiang Xuan quickly walked into the cave, lifted the insect bound by the rope, casually found a stone, smashed the insect's head flat, and then ran out of the cave. This is his first prey to come to this world, although it is a bug and not very tasty, he does not intend to discard it. "Your injury hasn't healed yet, I'll carry you on my back." Qishao glanced at the insect and without hesitation, picked up Jiang Xuan and ran away, quickly disappearing into the primitive jungle. Not long after they left, a group of tribal people dressed in animal skins, with mysterious patterns on their faces and crow feathers on their heads quickly arrived at the cave. Above their heads, there were hundreds of crows hovering, shouting in a hoarse and unpleasant manner. "Someone has been here before." Someone discovered a lasso trap and footprints on the ground. Later, they discovered the cave, where the fire had not been completely extinguished and there were some leftover bones on the ground. "They just left soon. This is our new hunting ground for the Crow tribe. People from other tribes are not allowed to enter. Chase after them and kill them." Dumb and mute. The hunting team of the Crow tribe immediately searched around with those crows. If Qishao and Jiang Xuan were caught up by them, with their identities, they would definitely be mercilessly killed. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Bamboo Cottage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Bamboo Cottage. Sister, let me down. I can run by myself. Qishao kept carrying Jiang Xuan on her back because she was running too fast and the road in the jungle was difficult to walk. She was so tired that she was sweating and panting heavily. "You still have injuries on your body. If you run too fast, the wound will crack, and it will be troublesome then." "It's okay, sister can still persevere." Qishao continued to run forward, afraid to stop, because the sound of crows could still be faintly heard behind her, indicating that the hunting team of the Crow tribe had not been shaken off yet. Jiang Xuan was very helpless. If the hunting team of the Crow tribe appeared a few days later, it would be better. His injuries healed and he could run on his own without the need for a red peony back. The crow's cry behind gradually disappeared, and it was unknown how long it had been running. A bamboo forest appeared ahead, and Qishao's face showed a happy expression. "Here we are, this is the farthest temporary overnight spot for the hunting team." Qishao carried Jiang Xuan up the mountain and walked into a bamboo forest. In the depths of the bamboo forest, there was a bamboo house built by a previous hunting team. "No, there's someone inside." As Qishao was about to pass, she suddenly noticed a faint white smoke rising from the roof, indicating that someone had started a fire inside. Qishao immediately took Jiang Xuan and hid behind a large stone, not daring to show off. "Who? Come out." At this moment, someone shouted from the other side of the bamboo house, followed by a series of footsteps running towards them. "What should we do? Are you still going to die after running away for so many days?" Qishao's eyes showed a look of despair. She had run too far with Jiang Xuan on her back and had no strength to run away with him on her back. Of course, she can also leave Jiang Xuan here and run on her own. With Jiang Xuan attracting the other person's attention, she is familiar with this area and has a great chance of escaping. "Sister, run away, don't worry about me." Jiang Xuan was a bit resigned. Qi Xiao is a good sister who has been taking care of him carefully for so many days. Since he is destined to not run away, there is no need to drag Qi Xiao to die together. He just felt a bit regretful. Not long after crossing over, his dream of building his own tribe did not come true, and he was about to die. However, Qi Xiao tightly grasped his hand and said with a firm gaze, "You are my younger brother, and I am only your relative. Even if I die, I will not leave you behind. You don't have to do this." Jiang Xuan's mood was very complicated, only he knew that he was not the true younger brother of Qi Xiao. "Stop talking, they're here." Qi Xiao pulled out a stone knife with one hand, and held a short spear with the right hand. Her gaze was firm and fierce, ready to take the final blow. The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and Jiang Xuan's already very nervous mood calmed down now. He looked at the side face of Qi Xiao, and the softest part of his heart was touched. In fact, for so many days, he has been very uncomfortable in his heart because he has traveled through time, and even if he has obtained his original memories, he does not have the true affection for the sister Qi Xiao. Until now, Qi Xiao would rather die than leave him, and this determination deeply touched him. Thinking about all these days of meticulous care from the red peony, Jiang Xuan finally untied his knot and officially accepted the red peony. "Sister, thank you." With this sound of sister, Jiang Xuan's willingly called out, and the sense of alienation in his heart dissipated in this moment. Qi Xiao did not turn back. As the footsteps approached, she held a short spear and a stone knife in her hand and rushed towards the unknown enemy without hesitation. Jiang Xuan gritted his teeth, picked up a stone casually, and rushed out, intending to put it together. However, as he rushed out from the back of the stone, he saw Qi Xiao holding a short spear, maintaining an attacking posture, and not taking any action. "Hook Vine, Stone Loach, Southern Star, why are you?" Across from Qi Xiao stood 3 young men, about 11 or 12 years old, holding bone spears or bamboo bows in their hands, staring blankly in place. Jiang Xuan silently threw away the stone he raised, as he was very familiar with these people. The tribe where Jiang Xuan originally belonged was called the Deer Tribe, and these people were all members of the Deer Tribe. These 3 teenagers are called Gaoting, Scallops, and Nanxing. Gaoting, like Jiang Xuan, is both 12 years old, while the other 2 teenagers, Shigui is 11 years old and Nanxing is only 10 years old, both of whom are relatively young. The boy named Gaoting put down his spear and exclaimed in surprise, "Qi Xiao, Xuan, you're still alive. It's really great." The 3 teenagers all put down their weapons, and after the Deer Tribe was destroyed, they saw their acquaintances for the first time, feeling particularly excited. Qi Xiao withdrew her short spear and asked, "How could you be here?" Gaoting said, "Come inside and say that there is still roasted bamboo chicken inside." "Okay." Qi Xiao and Jiang Xuan followed them into the bamboo house. After entering the bamboo house, Jiang Xuan saw 2 roasted bamboo chickens, some insects roasted golden on the stone slab, a pile of wild fruits, and several block-shaped plant roots inside. These 2 bamboo chickens were caught by us using a lasso trap. Here, let you eat. Without hesitation, Gaoting took down 2 roasted bamboo chickens and handed them to Qi Xiao and Jiang Xuan, respectively. Qi Xiao took a bamboo chicken, tore it in half with her bare hands, and gave half to Jiang Xuan. She returned the bamboo chicken in Jiang Xuan's hand to Gaoting. "We just need to eat one." Gaoting was no longer polite because they were young and it was not easy for them to obtain meat. "How did you escape here?" Qi Xiao asked while eating. Gaoting Dao then recounted the process of his escape. Originally, when the Raven tribe attacked the Deer tribe, due to a significant difference in strength, the witch and leader of the Deer tribe knew that they had lost the battle and that the Deer tribe was about to perish. The witch and the leader ordered the hunting captain Sangshu to flee with the children from the tribe, which can be considered as preserving some spark for the tribe. However, how could it be so easy to break through the layers of encirclement? In the battle, Xiangshu suffered serious injuries and the soldiers around him died one by one. When he finally broke through the encirclement, only these 3 young men were left by his side. Xiangshu fled with these 3 young men all the way, and finally managed to escape here. "What about Uncle Xiangshu?" asked Qishao hastily. The eyes of the 3 teenagers suddenly dimmed. Goting whispered, "Dead. Uncle Xiangshu was seriously injured. After bringing us here, he died within a few days. We buried him in the bamboo forest." Qishao had a sorrowful expression in her eyes, but she was very strong and did not cry. Jiang Xuan pondered for a moment and said, "The people of the Crow tribe have already taken over the hunting ground. They will eventually find this place. It is no longer safe here." The 3 teenagers heard the words, Crow tribe, and their eyes showed fear, causing them to panic for a moment. Gouting asked, "So what should we do?" Jiang Xiandao said, "If you want to survive, you must stay away from the activity range of the Crow tribe. Let's run a little further and find a safe place to stay for now." Qishao nodded and said, "Xian is right. The tribe is gone. We need to live well before we can seek revenge in the future." Gouting clenched his fist and said, "Revenge." Stone Loach and Nanqing also have a flame of revenge in their eyes. They are young and do not know how difficult it is to seek revenge from the Crow tribe, relying solely on their passion. Jiang Xiandao said, "Pack up your things. The people from the Crow tribe may come sometime. We'll leave here tomorrow." "Okay, listen to you." The 3 teenagers have no objections to this. They are relatively young and when faced with such a big issue, they instinctively rely on people who are stronger than them. So, the 5 of them had a full meal and set more traps in the bamboo forest, searching for bamboo insects and preparing as much food as possible. The big bug brought by Jiang Xuan was also eaten by everyone after being roasted, and the taste was actually quite good. In the evening, Qishao walked into the bamboo forest and without saying a word, added some soil to the solitary tomb. No one knew what she was thinking. The next day, the 5 of them set off again to search for a safer and more suitable place to live. Wishing you a happy birthday and a bright future to your old book friend Finkelin. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Shishan Ancient Vine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Shishan Ancient Vine. Bang bang bang. Woo woo, woo woo, woo woo. In the primitive forest, Jiang Xuan and others walked and knocked on trees with bamboo, while occasionally making roaring sounds in their mouths. They have been away from the bamboo forest for 2 days now, and Jiang Xuan's injuries have almost healed. He can walk without any problems. Ahead is a forest that no hunting team of the deer tribe has ever set foot in, with no trace of human activity. In such a place, what needs to be guarded against is no longer people, but those terrifying beasts. When they left the bamboo forest, each of them brought a small bamboo that was 2 fingers thick. This type of bamboo was not as tall as bamboo, but very tough. Bamboo hitting trees can make a loud and crisp sound, which is used to deter ferocious birds and beasts. Generally, wild animals will leave on their own when they hear such loud movements. The red peony in front suddenly stopped and listened attentively. Jiang Xuan nervously asked, "What's wrong?" Gouting and others are also very nervous. In such a strange place, there are too many fatal dangers, and it is uncertain when they will encounter them. Qishao closed her eyes and listened carefully for a while. There seems to be a sound of water flowing ahead. Jiang Xuan also listened carefully and nodded. There is indeed a sound of water flowing. Gouting asked, "Do we need to go over?" Jiang Xuan pondered for a moment and said, "Go and take a look. I hope to find a place with a river and flat land to live in. The water resources in the southern wilderness are very abundant, with mountains, springs, and streams everywhere. Therefore, there is no gathering of wild animals near the water. As long as it does not enter the water, it is still relatively safe. Then let's go." Qishao values her younger brother's views very much because she is just such a family member. As long as Jiang Xuan's words are not too outrageous, she will not refute them. The group followed the sound of the water flow and walked forward. The road that no one had walked was very difficult. After walking for about an hour, they finally found the place where the sound of the water flow came from. Wow! That is a river with a width of about 20 meters and a relatively slow flow rate. The water is very clear and there are many fish swimming around inside. There are also large areas of reeds growing by the river, about 3 to 4 meters high, very lush. Jiang Xuan stood on a huge stone, looking at the slowly flowing river ahead and excitedly said, "This is the river I'm looking for." 10-year-old Nanqing asked curiously, "Xuan, why are you looking for a river?" Jiang Xuan smiled mysteriously and said, "You will know in the future." Nanqing felt a bit confused, but without explaining the reason, Jiang Xuan had no choice. Qishao stood next to Jiang Xuan and asked, "Xuan, do we want to live here?" For Qishao, where she lives is actually not important, as long as Jiang Xuan is happy. After all, she is just such a younger brother. Jiang Xuan stood on a big stone, looked around, shook his head, and said, "There isn't much flat land here. You can't live here. Go ahead along the riverbank and look for it." Qishao didn't know why Jiang Xuan had to find a large flat area, but she respected Jiang Xuan's choice. "Okay, then let's move forward." The 5 people did not approach the riverbank because the reeds were too high and dense. Firstly, it was inconvenient to walk, and secondly, there may be terrifying predators hidden inside, so we cannot take this risk. They were still walking in the forest, and Jiang Xuan would occasionally climb up trees or stand tall to take a look, looking for a suitable place to live. After walking for half a day, it was already afternoon. If they couldn't find a suitable place to live, they would have to find a place to stay overnight first. As they climbed over a hillside, the front suddenly became wide and bright. There is a large expanse of open land ahead, where the river turns and continues to flow forward. Jiang Xuan looked around and his eyes lit up. This is a great place. Gaoting was also looking around when he suddenly saw something and pointed in a direction, exclaiming, "Look over there." Jiang Xuan followed the direction pointed by Gaoting and saw a scene that he would never forget. At the end of the open field, there is a steep stone mountain several hundred meters high, surrounded by cliffs on all sides. An ancient vine, which has grown for countless years, has an incredibly thick trunk that winds up the mountain and even wraps around the entire rocky mountain, like a giant dragon coiled around a pillar. "Oh my goodness, this is too big." Everyone was shocked. The vigorous ancient vine was larger than any vine they had seen before. Jiang Xuan was not only shocked, but also carefully observed the place. He found that there were not only river bends and forests here, but also a bamboo forest at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. A small stream flows out of the bamboo forest, winding its way through a large flat area before finally merging into the river. This is simply the perfect place to live. Jiang Xuan excitedly said, "This is the place I'm looking for." Qishao regained her senses and asked, "Xuan, do you want to live here?" Jiang Xuan nodded and pointed to the bamboo forest at the foot of the stone mountain, saying, "We'll settle down by the stream next to that bamboo forest. Then let's go. We need to hurry up a bit, it's already getting late." Qishao walked forward first, Jiang Xuan immediately followed, and Gaoting, Scallops, and Nanqing followed closely behind. That ancient vine is really amazing, like a deity. Living at the foot of a rocky mountain, one should receive divine protection, right? The tribal people worship gods and firmly believe that as long as they have a devout faith, the gods will protect them. There was no road on the ground, and the 5 of them braved through thorns and walked for over an hour before finally reaching the bamboo forest at the foot of the rocky mountain. The lush bamboo blocks the sunlight, and there are not many thorns and weeds under the bamboo forest, making people feel very comfortable. Jiang Xuan followed the sound of water and found the small stream. He chose a relatively flat area next to the stream and said to Qishao, "Let's live here." Qishao looked at him and said, "You like this place, we live here." But now it's getting dark, let's build a temporary residence first and start a fire, otherwise we'll have trouble encountering beasts at night. Okay. Jiang Xuan said to the three young men, let's go pick up some bamboo and build a temporary bamboo shed. Sister, go and start a fire. Qishao had no objections, and the three teenagers had no objections either. They all started working. There are many withered bamboo in the bamboo forest. After the bamboo dries up, it will soon be eaten by insects, become rotten, and fall down. Jiang Xuan, along with hooked vines and stone loaches, were near the creek, pulling the fallen bamboo trees one by one to the chosen location. Fresh bamboo is incredibly tough, and without a firewood knife, it takes a lot of effort and a long time to get it down. Picking up these fallen withered bamboo will be much easier. After pulling the dried bamboo to the designated location, Jiang Xuan found some tough vines and began building a bamboo shed. He chose living bamboo as his support, first tying a relatively intact bamboo horizontally between two bamboo poles, 1 person high, as a crossbeam. Subsequently, the other withered bamboo was placed on top of the crossbeam, tied with rattan, and the excess branches were folded off to create a simple bamboo shed in the shape of a slope. Then, they spread a large amount of moss, hay, and bamboo leaves on the top of the bamboo shed to prevent rain at night. Jiang Xuan, along with 3 teenagers, spent about an hour and finally built the bamboo shed. At this moment, the sun had already set, and the red peony found a withered prickly tree and a harder dead wood, and then lit a bonfire using the fire plow method. Then she cleaned up all the dead branches and fallen leaves near the campfire to prevent the fire from spreading and accidentally igniting the bamboo forest. Finally, she brought many stones from the creek and surrounded the fire, making it much safer. As for firewood, there is no need to worry about finding it. The large amount of dried bamboo in this bamboo forest is the best firewood. Night finally fell, and Jiang Xuan and his 5 companions sat in the simple bamboo shed, watching the dancing bonfire and eating the wild fruits picked on the road. Their hearts calmed down slightly. At least, they don't have to run around again tomorrow. Pop. After the bamboo in the fire is burned, the air inside the bamboo joints rapidly expands, causing the bamboo to explode and make a loud noise. This sound scared away the nearby beasts and birds. This is the most primitive firecracker and also a means for tribal people to prevent fierce beast attacks at night. Thank you to the book friend NCAT for giving 500 book coins as a reward. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Crab Catching. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Crab Catching. The next morning, the sound of birds and insects woke Jiang Xuan up from his sleep. He opened his sleepy eyes and noticed that others had also woken up, so he said hello and went to the creek to wash his face. The stream is very clear and shallow, with some finger-sized fish swimming back and forth in the water. After sleeping all night, Jiang Xuan was already hungry and saw that everything was food. However, these small fish are very slippery and it is not easy to catch them unless it takes a long time to make a fish cage. Wow! Jiang Xuan washed his face with cold stream water, and his whole body suddenly became much clearer. He suddenly thought that there were not only fish in the stream, but also some easier to catch animals. For example, crabs. This is autumn, when the crab paste is rich and delicious. Thinking of the delicious taste of crabs, Jiang Xuan's eyes lit up and he immediately began flipping through the stones by the creek. Qishao walked over curiously and asked, Xuan, what are you doing? Looking for crabs. What is a crab? Red Peony is a bit confused. The people of the deer tribe mainly hunt in the forest and occasionally eat fish, but they usually only stick to small streams, spear fish, and never easily go into the water, so naturally they don't know crabs. At this moment, Jiang Xuan flipped open a large stone and a big crab appeared, panicking and wanting to escape. Jiang Xuan quickly pressed down on its shell, reached out from behind the crab, grabbed its 4 legs on the side, and then lifted the big crab. Catching crabs is a skill. Its two large pliers are very powerful, but they can only grip things in front, on the left and right sides, and at the back, so it has no way. That's it. Jiang Xuan was very surprised because this crab was as big as a soup pot and weighed a lot. If it had been in his past life, such a large crab would have been a rare thing. Is this a crab? It looks fierce, can it be eaten? Shishan picked up a wooden stick casually and placed it on the crab's pliers. With a click sound, the stick was crisp and cut off. Of course I can eat it. In the tribe before, there was an uncle who took me to the water's edge to catch crabs and I could grill them to eat. In order to make Shishan believe that crabs can eat, Jiang Xuan had to panic. Shishan nodded, not suspecting Jiang Xuan's words, nor did she delve into who took him there. Gouting, Scallops, and Nanqing also came over. They looked at Jiang Xuan holding such a large crab with a look of admiration on their faces. Gouting said, "Xuan, you're amazing." The stone loach nodded fiercely on the side. This prey called crabs looked very fierce, but Jiang Xuan caught it so easily. Nanqing was even more eager to try. "Xuan, can you give me a hand?" "Of course you can, but be careful not to get caught in it." Nanqing glanced at the broken stick and immediately nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. When catching crabs, never reach your hand in front of it, grab from behind or from the side. Yes, that's it. Nanqing followed Jiang Xuan's guidance and lifted the crab. He saw the crab's huge claws waving left and right, but couldn't catch his hand. Nanqing laughed happily. "Give me a hand. I want it too." Hook Vine and Stone Loach took turns trying to catch that big crab, feeling particularly fresh. Jiang Xuan said, "Crabs like to hide under rocks in streams. You can also go flip over them, but it's best to take a wooden stick and press it down when you see the crab to avoid getting caught. By catching a few more, we can have a full meal and then have the strength to build houses." "Okay, let's go too." Red Peony, Hooked Vine, Stone Loach, and Southern Star each found a wooden stick, and then followed the example of Jiang Xuan to flip through the large stones by the creek. This place is rarely inhabited, and these crabs have never been caught before. They are not only large in size, but also in astonishing numbers. Not long after, they caught more than 10 big crabs. Jiang Xuan tied these crabs together with flexible and thin vines, forming a large string. Interestingly, as long as 2 or more crabs come together, they will use pliers to clamp each other's pliers or legs, and will not easily loosen them. In this way, it's as difficult as heaven for them to escape. Jiang Xuan and others happily returned to the bamboo shed with the big crabs. Shishan pointed at the big crab and asked, "Xuan, how do crabs eat?" The 3 members of Gouting also looked at Jiang Xuan. The crab was covered in hard shells, giving a feeling of being at a loss. "Simple, first throw them into the fire and grill them until cooked." Jiang Xuan was very confident in grilling crabs because he had grilled them a lot in his past life. Jiang Xuan first heated up the fire, then dug a space in the middle of the fire, threw all the big crabs in, and continued to add firewood. The flames were blazing brightly, and soon after, under the scorching heat, the shell of the big crab gradually changed from a bluish-gray to an appetizing red. However, crabs may have parasites inside their bodies and are large in size. Jiang Xuan must ensure that they are completely roasted before they can be eaten. Jiang Xuan used a wooden stick to stir charcoal fire onto these crabs and covered them. After a long time, the shell of the big crab was burnt black, but it did not turn into coke, and the crab meat inside was still intact. Jiang Xuan confirmed that they were already ripe, so he dug out the big crabs from the charcoal fire. Jiang Xuan said, "Sister, lend me your stone knife to use." Shishan pulled out the stone knife from her waist and handed it to Jiang Xuan. Jiang Xuan first pulled the largest crab aside, cooled it down a bit, then twisted its pliers and legs one by one and set them aside. Then, he used a stone knife to pry open the unrolled belly of the big crab and cut it off, which was inedible. Next, he pried open the crab shell with a stone knife, removed the crab stomach, crab heart, crab gills, and crab intestines one by one, and took them out one by one, telling them that they couldn't eat them and that eating them might cause poisoning. Upon hearing that they would be poisoned, all four of them became nervous and firmly remembered the parts of the crab that they couldn't eat. Alright, the rest can be eaten now. The big crab is steaming hot, with full crab roe, fair crab meat, and a fragrant aroma. Jiang Xuan scraped all the crab roe into the crab shell, shaved another bamboo slice, and handed it to Qishao. Sister, you can taste it first. Qishao took the crab shell, picked up some crab roe with bamboo slices and put it in her mouth. The delicious taste bloomed on the taste buds of her tongue, and her eyes lit up. Delicious. Qishao praised and then buried her head in eating, making Gauteng and others drool. Jiang Xuan smiled and said, "These meats are also very delicious." He cut open the big crab and divided the crab meat among the hooked vine, stone loach, and southern star that were swallowing saliva on the side. After eating crab meat, the three of them all wished to swallow it with their tongues. They had never tasted this delicious taste before. Then, Jiang Xuan used a stone to break open the big pliers and crab legs, and took out the crab meat inside to eat. The crabs behind, Jiang Xuan instructed Qishao, Gauteng, and others to take turns to fight, while he pointed them out on the side. After decomposing a few crabs, Qishao and three teenagers thoroughly remembered the steps of crab decomposition, and accurately picked out the parts that could not be eaten. After the big crabs decompose, they don't care about the crab roe or crab meat. They just bite it close to their mouths, and if they can't reach it, they smash it open with stones and eat it quickly. Not long after, a dozen or so big crabs were eaten up. Gauteng smashed open the last crab claw and stuffed the crab meat into his mouth, still unsatisfied. Delicious is delicious, but there are too many shells and too little meat, and it's gone before you're full. Everyone nodded one after another, the crab meat was indeed too scarce. Jiang Xuan smiled and said, "This thing couldn't have been a staple food. Let's eat something else. If you eat too much crabs in a day, you'll have stomach pain. Gauteng and others feel it's a pity. Why can't we eat so much delicious food?" However, they didn't dare to risk stomach pain and continue to grab and eat, so they had to wait for the next time. At present, a few people ate some wild fruits and plant roots, and after filling their stomachs, they started building houses. The bamboo shed is too rudimentary, and in order to live here for a long time, it is necessary to build a house that can truly shelter from wind and rain. Thank you to the book friend, Finch Lin, for giving a reward of 5,000 book coins. Congratulations to Finch Lin on becoming the first deacon of this book. Thank you to the book friend, Kue96, for giving me a reward. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Building Bamboo Houses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Building Bamboo Houses. Building a house is a relatively large project, especially building a stone or wooden house. Just moving stones or chopping trees requires a lot of time. Jiang Xuan doesn't plan to spend so much time, he plans to build a bamboo house according to local conditions. Bamboo usually grows very tall, straight, lightweight, sturdy and durable, making it suitable for building houses. The only problem is how to cut it off. Bamboo is very hard, and it is not easy to knock it down without iron tools. However, this is not difficult for Jiang Xuan. He has seen someone burn bamboo with fire, which is a time-saving and labor-saving method. Jiang Xuan said to Gauteng, "Stack the bamboo leaves and branches around the area to the roots of the bamboo, then ignite the fire and burn the bamboo, but be careful not to set fire to the entire bamboo forest." Gauteng nodded and said, "Don't worry, we will be careful." "Okay, let's start. Each person is responsible for a fire." Jiang Xuan chose a relatively large flat area in the bamboo forest, and then gathered the thick bamboo leaves and withered bamboo on the ground to the root of a bamboo tree. Qixiao brought a burning bamboo from the fire in the bamboo shed and ignited the bamboo leaves and withered bamboo piled up by Jiang Xuan. Peepa peepa. The flames quickly burst into flames, and under the high temperature of roasting, the skin of the bamboo quickly oozed out a large amount of oil and water vapor, making a hissing sound. Qixiao squatted next to Jiang Xuan, also collecting withered bamboo and bamboo leaves, burning a bamboo tree. She occasionally looked at Jiang Xuan. She found that this younger brother seemed to have become quite different from before, always able to come up with some strange ways. Perhaps the destruction of the tribe stimulated him and allowed him to grow. Qixiao didn't think too much, and Jiang Xuan's growth was also a good thing. Bamboo is hollow and flammable, even if it is raw, it can be quickly burned off. After Jiang Xuan burned the 2 bamboo trees, he moved the fire to the nearby bamboo roots to continue burning. Sha sha sha. Jiang Xuan struggled to hold the burnt bamboo and pull it down. The bamboo forest is very dense, with branches and leaves intertwined between them. It takes a lot of strength to pull it down. I'll do it. Qixiao walked over and took the bamboo from Jiang Xuan's arms. She forcefully pulled down both bamboo trees and pulled them to the open space outside the bamboo forest. Regarding this, Jiang Xuan can only once again sigh. The women of primitive tribes are too fierce. With the efforts of 5 people, it took half a day to burn down dozens of adjacent bamboo trees and create a clearing in the bamboo forest. This open space is rectangular, about 6 or 7 meters long and 4 or 5 meters wide, surrounded by densely growing bamboo. In the center of the open space, Jiang Xuan deliberately left 3 rows of bamboo in a straight line, which were used as pillars for the bamboo house. If you rely on yourself to dig pits and pillars, without a convenient tool, it will be time-consuming and laborious, and you may not be able to stand firmly. Living bamboo does not have these problems, it is deeply rooted and quite stable. After the bamboo house is built, just burn off the outer skin of the roots of the live bamboo, and it will naturally wither and die. There were still many protruding bamboo stakes on the ground, and Jiang Xuan asked everyone to continue burning them until all of them were burned down, and the ground became flat. Next, we will start building bamboo houses. Jiang Xuan's idea is very simple. He left live bamboo as pillars in the middle and around the bamboo house where pillars were needed. Then, he just needs to remove the branches and leaves of the burnt bamboo and burn it to the desired length. Use these live bamboo as pillars and tie the required beams of the roof onto them with vines. Then use the burnt bamboo to lay a triangular roof for easy drainage. After building the roof, it is necessary to climb to the roof, use stones, and cut off the excess parts of live bamboo with a stone knife or axe, burning off the skin at the roots. Finally, cover the roof with bark, bundled hay, etc., and then perfect the walls and doors on all sides. This way of making bamboo houses not only makes them sturdy, but also saves a lot of time and effort. The construction of the bamboo house began immediately after clearing the open space. During the construction of the bamboo house, the red peony takes some time every day to enter the depths of the bamboo forest or set up some hunting traps in the forests on both sides of the Rocky Mountain. This place probably hasn't been visited before, and there are a lot of prey. Red peony can harvest some prey every day, such as muntjac, deer, wild chicken, bamboo chicken, mountain mouse, etc. With sufficient meat, the 5 of them were full of enthusiasm and spent a whole 10 days building the bamboo house. Finally built. Jiang Xuan stood inside the bamboo house he had built himself, for some reason, with a feeling of tears welling up in his eyes. A house is not just a place to eat and sleep, it can also bring peace of mind. Without a house, one never knows where to go tomorrow, like a rootless duckweed. In the future, this will be our home. Jiang Xuan pointed to the bamboo house and announced this to everyone. Qixiao, Gaoting, and others are equally excited. With a house, they can sleep peacefully at night without having to watch the night every day and be afraid. However, the bamboo house is empty and needs to be filled with furniture. Firstly, it was about creating several beds. Jiang Xuan didn't want to sleep on the cold and damp ground all the time. The material used to make the bed, of course, is still bamboo. Jiang Xuan led his men to burn dozens of bamboo sticks in front of the bamboo house again, which not only cleared a space in front of the door, but also used the fallen bamboo to make various furniture. He burned bamboo into pieces of similar length and then tied them with rattan to form bamboo rows, which became a simple bedboard. Subsequently, Jiang Xuan specifically found a few thick bamboo sticks and tied them horizontally under the bedboard, so that the bedboard could be suspended and leave the cold and damp ground. With the efforts of 5 people, they made 5 such beds, and each person can have one. This made them very happy, especially Red Peony, who is ultimately a girl. Apart from Jiang Xuan, she doesn't want to sleep next to anyone else. For so many days, a large amount of plant ash and bamboo charcoal have been burned. Jiang Xuan sprinkled a large amount of plant ash and bamboo charcoal in the bamboo room, where the bed should be placed, to prevent insects and dehumidify. Later, he moved 5 single beds into the bamboo house. Due to limited space inside the bamboo house, the bamboo beds where the 4 teenagers slept were placed on the left side of the house, side by side, while the beds of the Red Peony were placed separately on the right side of the bamboo house. Jiang Xuan and others brought a large amount of hay to spread on the bed, and a thick layer of bamboo leaves was laid on top of the hay. A soft layer of moss was also laid on top of the bamboo leaves, making sleeping much more comfortable and less irritating. Finally, Jiang Xuan used a large amount of bamboo as a screen and made a partitioned single room for Qishao, so she could have a separate room to sleep in. This makes Qishao very happy. Who wouldn't want to have an independent space? After making the bed, Jiang Xuan and others brought a pile of relatively flat stones from the creek and formed a fire pit in the center of the house. After lighting the fire pit, this brand new bamboo house gained popularity and fireworks. As for other furniture, including pots, pans, ladles, and other items, they will be gradually added and improved in the future. After all this was done, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. At night, Jiang Xuan lay on the bamboo bed, looking sideways at the tightly closed door and the flames burning in the fire pit, feeling at ease for the first time. In the future, things will definitely get better and better. With this idea in mind, Jiang Xuan had a smile on his face and fell asleep. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Making Skeletal Scallops. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Making skeletal scallops. Having a house and storing food has become a top priority. It is currently autumn, with many wild fruits and vegetables on the mountain, as well as a lot of prey, so there is no need to worry about food. But Jiang Xuan learned from his memory that it would snow in the southern wilderness. Once winter comes and heavy snow seals the mountains, it becomes very difficult to find food. If winter food is not prepared in advance, there is a risk of starvation. Therefore, it is necessary to reserve enough food in advance to cope with the upcoming cold winter. Jiang Xuan took the exam for a long time and focused on digging plant roots and fishing. Plant roots are durable for storage, and fish can also be dug into a pond and raised directly until winter. Once it snows, there is no need to worry about food spoilage. The most important thing is that these two foods are relatively easy to obtain and in large quantities. If you want to dig plant roots and ponds, you must make a suitable digging tool. Otherwise, relying on wooden sticks and hands to dig, when will you have to dig? After careful consideration, Jiang Xuan finally decided to make 2 bone scallops. The bone C looks like a shovel, which is a tool used by the tribesmen to dig earth. The materials required to make a bony scallop include the shoulder blades of cloven-hoofed animals, sharp stones drilled in holes, a straight wooden pole, and ropes used for binding and fixing. These materials are not difficult to obtain. A few days ago, a lasso trap under the red peony caught a green muntjac that looked like a deer but had very short horns. The meat had already been eaten, but the bones were left behind, including 2 very wide shoulder blades. The scapula of cloven-hoofed animals is roughly triangular in shape and is naturally shaped like a shovel, making it the preferred animal bone for tribal people to make bone spears. Jiang Xuan found these 2 shoulder blades and then took them to the side of the stream to find a rough stone to smooth them out. Cha-cha-cha. By the creek, Jiang Xuan vigorously grinds a shoulder blade, occasionally pouring some water onto it with a bamboo tube to wash away the bone powder from the stone. Xian, what are you grinding animal bones for? Qishao walked over curiously and asked Jiang Xuan about it. Make a bone slice. Do you know how to make bone slices? Qishao looked at him in surprise. I've seen people in the tribe do it before, and I want to give it a try. If we succeed, it will be much more convenient for us to dig traps and wild vegetables in the future. Jiang Xuan continued grinding as he spoke. The animal bones were relatively hard, and it would take a long time and a lot of effort to smooth them out. Qishao saw a shoulder blade next to Jiang Xuan, so she stepped forward to pick it up and said, "Let me help you grind this one." Okay. Jiang Xuan didn't refuse either. If he had to polish these 2 shoulder blades himself, it would probably take a whole day. With the help of red peony, the time can be shortened by more than half. Xian, we're also here to help. Gaoting, Scallops, and Nanxing have also come over, and everyone has come up with a solution. Jiang Xuan said, "Nanxing, go help me twist some ropes. I need the bark to be woven, thin, and strong enough." Okay, I'll go right away. Nanxing immediately ran to find a suitable thin tree bark to rub the rope. This kind of activity has been done by children in the tribe since childhood and is not complicated. A 10-year-old child is at their strongest stage of exhibitionism and is willing to help others. Jiang Xuan said to Gaoting and Stone Loach again, "Go and help me chop down 2 small trees. Choose the trees that make stone spears, and the trunk should be 3 fingers thick." Okay, let's go chop now. There are many shrubs outside the bamboo forest, some of which are very tough and suitable for making spears, as well as wooden handles for making bone spears. Hookvine and Stone Loach searched for a few sharp-edged pebbles by the creek and then cut down trees. With the efforts of 5 people, half a day later, all the materials for making 2 bone scallops were ready. The scapula has been ground flat, and the wider end has been ground very thin and sharp. 4 holes have been drilled with sharp stones in the middle, 2 on each side, to secure the wooden pole with ropes. The fine rope woven from the bark of the tree has already been twisted, and Jiang Xuan is very satisfied with the rope he has twisted. 2 straight small trees have also been cut back, and the hooked vines and stone loaches have peeled off the bark, smoothed the surface with stones, and made wooden poles. Everything is ready, and now it's up to Jiang Xuan. Can he succeed? Qishao and the 3 teenagers are all looking forward to it. Let's get started. Jiang Xuan took all the materials into the bamboo house, rubbed his hands excitedly, and then began to make bone slices. Those 2 wooden poles are actually best dried in the shade before use, as they are not easy to crack or deform. However, if they are dried in the shade for at least a month, Jiang Xuan cannot wait that long. He placed the wooden pole on the fire pit and quickly baked it with flames. After the wooden pole is burned, the surface moisture quickly evaporates and then carbonizes. After the surface of the wooden pole was slightly burnt black, Jiang Xuan moved it away from the fire pit and glanced at the slightly curved area, pressing it straight while it was hot. After the wooden pole cools down, it is basically solidified and not easily deformed again. Next, Jiang Xuan flattened the bottom side of the wooden pole with sharp-edged gravel blocks to better fit the ground shoulder blades. On the other side, 2 grooves were cut to secure the rope. If there are no grooves, the rope can easily shift and become loose when using it with a little more force. After handling the wooden pole, Jiang Xuan flattened the side of the pole and attached it to his shoulder blade. He continued to trim the uneven areas until they fit perfectly. Subsequently, he used a twisted string to pass through the drilled hole in his shoulder blade, wrapped it around the groove on the wooden pole, and then wrapped it layer by layer. Every time he wrapped it, the two strands of rope crossed. After tying the knot, the wooden pole and scapula were tightly tied together. All right. Jiang Xuan held his bony penis in both hands and tried to wave it a few times, feeling very smooth and filled with a sense of achievement in his heart. Xuan, you're really amazing. You can do anything. Hook Vine, Stone Loach, and Southern Star, the three young men cast admiring gazes at Jiang Xuan. Jiang Xuan built a bamboo house, made a bamboo bed, and now he has also made a bone slice, which is really amazing. Jiang Xuan was also quite proud in his heart and said humbly, "We all rely on everyone's help, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it alone." That's not right. Qishao frowned slightly, as she looked at the bone slices made by Jiang Xuan and felt that there were still some shortcomings. What's wrong? Jiang Xuan put away his pride and asked in surprise. Qishao pointed up a few inches from the connection between the shoulder blade and the wooden pole and said, "Here, there is still a short horizontal wooden pole missing. I remember the bone blade can be stepped on with your feet, which saves effort." Upon reflection, Jiang Xuan felt as if it was indeed the case. He said shyly, "I forgot about the crossbar. Thanks to my sister's reminder, I added it now." The small tree cut back by the hooked vine and stone loach still had its end. Jiang Xuan used sharp stones to cut down two sections, each about 20 centimeters long. He peeled off the skin of these two short rods, baked them once, and then flattened and fitted the side where the long and short rods came into contact. The other side was cut into grooves, and then tightly tied together with a thin rope. After finishing it, Jiang Xuan checked it first and then handed the bone slice to Qishao, saying, "Sister, do you think there are any omissions?" Qishao placed the bone spatula on the ground and stepped on the short pole with her foot. With the help of her foot, the shovel of the bone spatula quickly sank into the soil. She pressed down on the long pole and easily lifted a piece of soil. Qishao smiled contentedly and said, "Xuan, you did a great job, just like the bone scallops I used in the tribe before." With his sister's approval, Jiang Xuan finally breathed a sigh of relief and a happy smile appeared on his face. The three young men also took turns trying the use of bone spears and admired Jiang Xuan even more, because in the tribe, the people who could make these tools were often adult warriors. Having learned from the experience of the first bone slice, Jiang Xuan successfully completed the production of the second bone slice. With these two bony spears, Jiang Xuan can finally carry out his next plan in his heart. Fishing. Thank you to the book friend Yanir for her reward. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Fishing Traps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Fishing Traps. In front of the Shishan bamboo forest, there is a large area of flat land with low-lying terrain, damp and watery, especially in areas where streams flow. Almost all of the growth is shrubs and weeds, with fewer tall trees. Jiang Xuan plans to choose a low-lying area near a stream, dig a pool of water, and verify his own fishing method. "Sister, please accompany me out and set a trap. This world is too dangerous." Even if it's not far from the bamboo forest, Jiang Xuan decided to take the red peony with him to ensure his own safety. "What kind of trap should we set?" Qishao asked curiously. "Fishing traps. Can fishing also be done with traps?" Qishao was somewhat surprised. The people of the deer tribe also eat fish because the southern wasteland has abundant water resources, with mountains, springs, and streams everywhere. The natural resources of fish are abundant, and the tribe people will not let go of any available meat. However, they are usually in small streams, directly smashing with wooden sticks, grabbing with bare hands, or stabbing fish with spears without even a harpoon. As for places with deep water, such as small rivers, they will not approach. Because in the past, many people were dragged into the water by terrifying big fish, unable to even save them. Just come with me and you'll understand. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. Jiang Xuan didn't explain too much. Okay, I'll go with you. Qishao trusts Jiang Xuan very much because he is her own younger brother, let alone Jiang Xuan's ability to build bamboo houses and make bone skewers. I'll go too. Gouting quickly picked up another bone slice and said, I can help you dig a trap. I have a lot of strength, and I dig the soil very quickly. And me, if I come across a wild beast, I can help hunt it. The stone loach immediately brought his bamboo bow and bone spear, and he didn't want to stay in the bamboo house. The youngest Nanxing held his wooden spear and looked eagerly at Jiang Xuan. You all go, can't you leave me behind? What if a fierce beast breaks in? I'm so young. Jiang Xuan helplessly said, all right, everyone go. Upon receiving Jiang Xuan's reply, the three teenagers immediately smiled and put on their weapons, preparing to go out. Since everyone is out, no one will take care of the fire pit. Let's put a few big sticks of firewood first, so as not to come back and start a new fire. Behind the bamboo forest is a rocky mountain, with forests on both sides. Because withered bamboo is not durable to burn, they picked up many withered trees and piled them up under the eaves as firewood. Red Peony picked up 2 thick withered trees from outside the bamboo house and placed them in the fire pit. These logs burn slowly and can last for a long time. After closing the door, Jiang Xuan brought a bone and a bamboo tube, and then went out with the others. Jojo. G. Jiang Xuan and his 5 companions walked along the creek, hearing various sounds of birds and insects chirping in their ears. It has been some time since autumn, and the grass and trees are gradually turning yellow. This should be the last carnival of the insects. The further down, the flatter the terrain, the deeper the stream, and the larger the swimming fish in the water. Qishao held the short spear and listened attentively to the movements around her. As the only warrior among the 5 who had entered a hunting team, she knew very well that no matter where she was, she could not be careless. When the stream looked very deep, Jiang Xuan stopped walking forward. At this moment, they were more than 200 meters away from the bamboo house. Don't underestimate these 200 meters. In a place with dense vegetation, it's not an easy task to scrape open those shrubs and wild grass and wade a road of over 200 meters. Of course, when they walk a few more times in the future, completely suppress or even eradicate the vegetation along the way, this road will be easy to walk. Jiang Xuan looked around and finally chose a low-lying depression next to the stream with sparse wild grass. He said, let's dig here. Okay, I'll get rid of these grass first. Gouting swung his bone spear and swept it horizontally, cutting off the wild grass in the depression. Then, he used his bone spear to shovel off the grass one by one, making it much more convenient to work. Gouting caused such a commotion that the fish in the stream fled one after another and temporarily hid. But don't worry, they will still appear when the noise disappears. Jiang Xuan and Gouting use bone spears to weed, Red Peony uses stone knives, stone loaches use bone spears, and Nanxing uses wooden spears. Everyone is working hard to get rid of these weeds. Not long after, the larger wild grass on the ground was basically cleaned up. Gouting didn't feel any hardship at all and asked with great enthusiasm, Xian, what are you going to do next? Dig such a large pool, there's no need to dig too deep. Jiang Xuan drew a circular range on the ground with a bone spatula, with a diameter of about 2 meters. Okay, let's get started then. The 5 of them used their own tools and worked hard to dig up the soil. Jiang Xuan and Gouting dig the soil the fastest because they have a bone slice. With just 1 foot on the crossbar of the bone slice can easily sink into the moist soil, and with another pry up, they can pick up a large piece of soil. With the efforts of 5 people, an hour later, a nearly circular pool with a diameter of about 2 meters and a depth of about 40 centimeters was dug. During the process of digging soil, they also dug out many plump earthworms, about dozens, all of which Jiang Xuan packed with the bamboo tubes he brought. Next, we will introduce the stream water and fill this pool. The newly dug pool was less than half a meter away from the creek. Jiang Xuan dug a water inlet about 20 centimeters wide with a bone spatula, and the stream water immediately splashed into the pool, filling it up in no time. Jiang Xuan found another wooden stick and pounded all the earthworms inside the bamboo tube, then grabbed a few stones and stuffed them into the tube. Finally, he placed the bamboo tube in the center of the newly dug pool. Due to the presence of stones, which were filled with water, the bamboo tube quickly sank to the bottom of the water. Alright, let's take a break next to it first. Jiang Xuan washed his hands and cleaned his bones, then walked over to the nearby stone and sat down. Is this over? Shishan and the three young men were a bit confused, so they dug a pit, filled it with water, and put in some mashed earthworms. Is this what they call a fishing trap? Jiang Xuan explained with a smile, fishing is different from hunting animals. Wild animals on the mountains have feet and can run around, but most fish do not have feet and can only move in areas with water and cannot land. Jiang Xuan pointed to the newly dug pool and said, this pool is connected to the stream, and the earthworms in the pool are bait. In order to make the fishy smell of the earthworms spread faster in the water, I even mashed them up. After smelling the fishy smell of earthworms in the stream, the fish will swim to the pool we dug through the water inlet. After the fish enter, we only need to move a large stone and block the inlet, so that the fish inside cannot go out. At that time, with such a small pool and shallow water, we just need to stir up the water and easily catch the fish. After listening to Jiang Xuan's explanation, the four of them were all stunned. They thought what Jiang Xuan said was reasonable, but they couldn't believe it because it was too simple, right? They rested in the nearby grass, skeptical, and occasionally glanced into the pool. Time passed by bit, and after the surroundings quieted down, the hidden fish quickly swam back and forth in the stream. Not long after, a fish with a keen sense of smell smelled the fishy smell of earthworms. They swam along the direction of the smell and without hesitation into the water pool, circling around the bamboo tube, wanting to eat the food inside. The fish really got in. He stood up excitedly, staring at Gouting over there. He lowered his voice for fear of scaring the fish away. Red Peony, Stone Loach, and Nanqing also stood up and looked over. They found that there were actually quite a few fish entering the pool, both big and small. This also made them finally believe that the fishing trap arranged by Jiang Xuan was really useful. Shishan asked Jiang Xuan in a low voice, do you want to go over and block the water inlet now? Jiang Xuan looked at the fish in the pool and said, the big fish hasn't come in yet. Wait a little longer. These fish can't eat earthworms and won't run away until the smell disappears. Okay. They waited patiently for a while, and soon after, a few big fish swam in along the inlet. Jiang Xuan estimated based on their body size that each of these big fish should weigh more than 10 pounds. Sister, go block the water inlet. As soon as Jiang Xuan finished speaking, Shishan, who was already eager, rushed over with a few steps and picked up a large stone next to the stream. With a snap, it directly blocked the water inlet. She was also afraid of not being safe, so she picked up some smaller stones to block the gaps. Wow! The fish in the pool panicked and quickly swam back and forth in the water, wanting to escape, but the pool was only so big, where could it go? Jiang Xuan and three young men immediately ran over, excited to catch fish. However, at this moment, two fish suddenly jumped out of the water and spread their winged fins in the air. They flew several meters in a flapping motion and fell into a small stream, splashing 2 splashes of water before disappearing in the blink of an eye. This incident happened too quickly, even Shishan didn't react because she had never seen such a strange fish with long wings. How come there are still flying fish? Jiang Xuan held the bony fish and suddenly became confused. How could this fish meat, which was about to reach his mouth, fly away like this? The others were also confused. If it weren't for their fear of water, the three teenagers would have jumped into the water and caught the fish. Qishao held the short spear and comforted, "It's okay, there are still many fish here. With me watching, they can't run away." Jiang Xuan nodded and said, "I'll mix up the water first. When the fish head floats to the surface, you'll see the opportunity and knock the fish unconscious." Qishao and the three young men rubbed their hands together, they wouldn't let these fish have another chance to escape. Jiang Xuan plunged his bony fish into the water and vigorously stirred it. Soon, the water in the pool became extremely turbid, and the fish in the water couldn't hold on. Soon, they all floated to the surface of the water. "Hurry up and knock these fish out before you catch them." Jiang Xuan seized the opportunity and fiercely tapped the head of a large fish with his broad bone. The fish struggled fiercely a few times before flipping its belly up and floating. Jiang Xuan quickly brought this fish to the shore and continued to shoot other fish. Qishao and the three young men also started to fight one after another. Not long after, except for some small fish, more than a dozen fish in the pool were knocked unconscious or killed by beating, and then they were brought ashore. Good harvest. Jiang Xuan looked at more than a dozen fish, big and small, on the ground, feeling very happy. This fishing trap was very effective, and his thinking was right. Moreover, this fishing trap can continue to be used, which can be said to be permanent. The only regret is that those two flying fish ran away. "I'm leaving, I'll go back and bake some fish." Jiang Xuan moved the stones at the water inlet so that other fish could still enter. Then, he found two vines to string these fish together, picked up a string with each hook vine, and brought them back to the bamboo house. This trip was full of harvest, and when we returned, everyone's mood was very good and their footsteps became much lighter. If you have any ideas, you can leave a message to tell the author. Thank you to all the book friends for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Roast Fish and Digging Ponds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Roast Fish and Digging Ponds, Pop. Jiang Xuan picked up a suitable black gravel from the creek, aimed it at a large stone, and threw it forcefully. The gravel burst open in response, and Jiang Xuan picked up a thin piece of stone with a very sharp fracture. Subsequently, he untied a large fish from the vine, removed its scales and gills with a stone slice, and opened its intestines and stomach. A lot of fish oil. Fish in autumn are very fat, with a lot of fish oil in their stomachs. Jiang Xuan was overjoyed. Most of the wild beasts on the mountain are lean meat with very little fat. For tribal people, meat and oil are good things, more popular than lean meat. He tore off the fish oil bit by bit, used a bamboo tube to hold it, and left the swim bladder, while throwing the rest aside. Fish bladder is a type of fish bubble that, after being sun-dried and boiled, can produce fish bladder glue, which is a highly viscous adhesive. Qishao and Gouting also found sharp stones and helped kill the fish together. After all the fish were cooked, Jiang Xuan obtained about a pound of fish oil and more than 10 fish swim bladders of different sizes. As for the fish scraps, Jiang Xuan asked the red peony to be packed in a bamboo tube and poured them all into the previously dug pool, so as to attract more fish. After finishing, Jiang Xuan and others washed all the fish clean and took them back to the bamboo house to grill. In fact, they can't eat so much fish at a meal because these dozen or so fish add up to at least 50 or 60 pounds. But there's no way, if we don't grill all these fish, in autumn weather, at most one day and night, these fish will stink. In the bamboo house, above the fire pit, there is a thick bamboo crossbeam that is not very high. It can be reached by standing up and extending your hand. There are more than 10 woven ropes hanging on the bamboo crossbeam, each with a rope sleeve at the end, which can be connected to other ropes for hanging endless meat. The flames of the fire pit keep burning day and night, and the high temperature and smoke constantly smoke and roast the meat hanging on the crossbeam. Mosquitoes and insects cannot get close, and bacteria are difficult to breed. The meat will also become more and more dry as it is smoked, which can extend the shelf life of the meat. This method was not conceived by Jiang Xuan, but rather a common practice of the deer tribe, which is the survival experience and wisdom of the tribe's people. If it weren't for this method, raw meat wouldn't have been preserved for long without salt. Leave 2 for later to eat, hang the rest. Jiang Xuan and Gouting tied the fish one by one onto the rope hanging from the crossbeam, hanging high above the fire pit, and receiving the smoke and fire for roasting. There are 2 fish, which were pierced with wooden sticks and grilled by the fire pit to eat. That dozen or so swim bladders, Jiang Xuan found a thin vine and hung it on the wall of the bamboo house for future use. Jiang Xuan added some firewood to the fire pit, and the fire quickly became very lively. The light of the fire reflected on the fish and the faces of 5 people. There is a circle of large stones by the fire pit, and Jiang Xuan stands the wooden stick wearing fish on the opposite 2 large stones. He can flip the fish from time to time, so he doesn't have to always hold it in his hand. Although the fish has been cleaned, there is still a faint fishy smell. The fishy smell. Jiang Xuan seemed to remember something. Don't grill the fish yet, I'll go out for a while. Jiang Xuan moved the fish to one side, then stood up, picked up the bone and walked outside. Qishao quickly followed, afraid that Jiang Xuan would go far and encounter danger. Xuan, where are you going? I'll go find some spices. What is spice? Red Peony was puzzled. You'll know later. Jiang Xuan walked into the forest on the right side of the bamboo forest, and not far away, he saw a plant whose leaf edges had already turned yellow. He walked over and tried to pull it out first, but didn't pull it out. So he used a bone spatula to dig out the plant along with its underground roots. The fine roots of the plant broke, and a pungent odor immediately spread. This is a wild ginger plant, which can be seen everywhere in the southern wilderness mountains and forests. There are several other plants in the adjacent areas, but Jiang Xuan did not dig them again. Qishao looked at the wild ginger dug by Jiang Xuan and said, "This is a herb that can detoxify. Why are you digging this?" Tribal people use many herbs, and wild ginger, which is commonly found in the mountains, is also one of them. I heard from people in the tribe that this herb not only detoxifies, but also removes the fishy smell, making the grilled meat more fragrant. I want to try if it can be used to roast fish. Jiang Xuan pushed the matter to the people of the deer tribe without blushing or jumping, as there was no evidence to prove it. Really? Why haven't I heard of it? Qishao was skeptical, but she didn't ask any further. It's not her personality to dig deeper. Just give it a try and you'll know. Jiang Xuan walked back with bone skewers and wild ginger, and Qishao thought about it too. Anyway, there wasn't much harm, just give it a try. Jiang Xuan returned to the outside of the bamboo house, put down the bony bamboo, washed the wild ginger by the stream, broke off the stems and leaves on top, and used sharp stone slices to cut the wild ginger into several pieces. After returning to the bamboo house, Jiang Xuan divided the wild ginger in half and stuffed it into the stomachs of 2 grilled fish. He then used thin vines to simply sew the fish stomachs together to prevent the wild ginger slices from falling out. Jiang Xuan placed another big stone at the edge of the fire pit, placed 2 fish on top, and then pulled the red charcoal fire from the center of the fire pit, directly roasting the fish with charcoal fire. Barbecuing fish over open fire can cause burning, while charcoal fire is relatively mild, making the grilled fish less likely to burn. Time passed by bit, and under the charcoal fire, the grilled fish gradually emitted a meaty aroma, along with a faint scent of wild ginger. The surface of the fish gradually turned scorched yellow, and the fragrance permeated the entire bamboo house. You can eat now. Jiang Xuan placed 2 grilled fish on a clean slate, then used chopsticks to pick up a piece of fish meat from the back of the grilled fish, blew it, and put it in his mouth. When building the bamboo house, he ground several pairs of chopsticks with bamboo. Unfortunately, besides himself and Qishao, Gauteng and others prefer to eat them directly with their hands. The fish is grilled for a relatively long time, dried, and has a rich meat flavor with a hint of wild ginger. This pristine freshwater fish has an excellent taste, even if only 2 slices of wild ginger are added, it tastes delicious. The taste is good, everyone try it quickly. Jiang Xuan continued to eat while greeting. Qishao also picked up a pair of chopsticks. She was not used to using chopsticks, but Jiang Xuan liked them, so she tried to get used to them so that Jiang Xuan wouldn't be lonely. Qishao clumsily picked up a piece of fish with chopsticks and held it with her hand, afraid it might fall off. After putting the fish into her mouth, she chewed it a few times and nodded in satisfaction. Her eyes narrowed slightly with a smile, like crescent moon. Adding that herb really makes it much more delicious than before. Qishao fully affirmed Jiang Xuan's method of stuffing wild ginger into the belly of the fish and grilling it. Hot and hot. Gauteng, Scallops, and Nanqing directly tore the fish meat with their hands, shouting to scald while blowing and stuffing it into their mouths. It's delicious. Xuan, the fish you grilled is amazing. I still have to eat. The 3 of them quickly ate a big fish, which had no small bones. Jiang Xuan roasted it dry, so although they ate quickly, no one got stuck by the bones. After finishing 2 big fish, the 5 of them were still unsatisfied. They skewered the fish oil onto a small wooden stick, grilled it over charcoal fire, and then ate it. The taste of fish oil is not really good, but no one cares, as long as it can be eaten. After finishing the fish, Jiang Xuan thought to himself, it would be great if he could make a pot of fish soup. He always eats grilled food and gets tired of it. However, boiling soup requires a pot, and without a pot, at least a clay pot is needed. The earthen jar. Jiang Xuan muttered softly for a moment, and his eyes lit up. Why don't we burn some pottery? The red peony on the side heard his words and exclaimed in surprise, Xuan, do you still know how to make pottery? How much have you learned in the tribe? Qishao always has an unreal feeling. Her younger brother is so powerful, why didn't she notice it before? Some people in the deer tribe do indeed know how to make pottery. Although it is only the most primitive and simple earthenware, it is also pottery, possessing the basic functions and characteristics of pottery. Jiang Xuan said awkwardly, I just saw them make it before. As for whether it can be successfully fired, I have to try it before I know. Qishao nodded and said, then give it a try, Xuan. I believe you. This place is rich in resources, and now there is a way to catch fish, combined with hunting and digging for plant roots. As long as you work hard and store enough winter food for 5 people, it is not particularly difficult. With fewer people and more resources, the pressure of survival is much lower than when I was in the deer tribe. Okay, I'll try my best. In order to enjoy the broth, Jiang Xuan decided to try making pottery. In fact, the manufacturing of pottery is not complicated. All you need to do is choose the appropriate clay, repeatedly pat, rub, and knead it into a shape, then dry it in the air and burn it through at high temperature. As long as you try a few more times and summarize your experience, you should be able to succeed. There is clay by the creek, which is a delicate and white-colored soil. They are excellent materials for making pottery jars. However, before making pottery, there is a more urgent thing to do, which is to dig a pond. Since fishing traps are effective, they will definitely catch a lot of fish in the future. Can't they all hang them up for smoking? What a big fire pit that is. The best way is to dig a pond and raise these fish. Whenever you want to eat them, you can directly go and catch them without worrying about preservation. Small fish can also be raised. The next morning, Jiang Xuan got up and took 2 half-dried smoked fish from above the fire pit. He grilled them to give everyone a feast, and then began preparing tools for digging the pit. As the saying goes, in order to do a good job, one must first sharpen their tools. Good tools can greatly improve work efficiency. With the help of Qi Xiao and others, Jiang Xuan spent a whole day making 3 more bone spears. Adding the first 2, they had 5 bone spears, and each person could have 1. Then, they spent another day weaving 3 baskets of different sizes with rattan sticks to transport the excavated soil. On the 3rd day, they finally started digging the pond. Jiang Xuan chose an area in front of the bamboo forest that was relatively close to the creek and had a flat terrain. After removing the wild grass and shrubs on top, the 5 of them simultaneously dug soil with their bones and spears. The excavated soil was then stacked in wicker baskets around the area to build ponds and embankments. Due to outdated tools, they dug a pond that was 6 meters long, 4 meters wide, and half a meter deep for 8 whole days to complete. The hard work involved was not enough for outsiders. Jiang Xuan spent another day using well-mixed wet mud to paste the pond embankments on all sides, so as not to easily leak water. After setting up the pond embankment, Jiang Xuan inserted a small fence woven with branches at the outlet, making it difficult for the fish to escape. After everything was done, Jiang Xuan dug a water diversion channel to divert the stream water into the pond. Wow! The stream is rushing, filling the pond bit by bit. Jiang Xuan and his 5 companions stood by the pond, watching as the water surface gradually rose, their hearts filled with a sense of achievement. Xuan, after digging the pond, will we have endless fish to eat in the future? Nanqing asked longingly. Jiang Xuan smiled and said, yes, one day we will have endless fish to eat. Great! Nanqing suddenly laughed happily, and both Gaoting and Shiloch also smiled. Qi Xiao looked at Jiang Xuan and said, I really hope this day comes soon so that everyone doesn't have to worry about going hungry anymore. Jiang Xuan nodded, believing that as long as he worked hard, that day would come sooner or later. After digging the pond, the fish caught by the fishing trap will no longer be killed. They use wicker baskets to catch the fish from the pond, and then use animal skin bags to put live fish back into the pond for free range. A few days later, the newly dug pond became no longer empty, and many fish swam back and forth in the water. However, they soon discovered a new problem. Carnivorous fish often bite grass-eating fish. Even if grass-eating fish are relatively large, they can be bitten all over and even die directly. Helpless, Jiang Xuan had to drain the water in the pond and rebuild a new embankment in the middle of the pond to separate carnivorous fish and grass-eating fish. Although carnivorous fish still bite each other, at least grass carp can survive by throwing some water plants as food every day. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Burning Pottery. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Burning Pottery. After finishing the work of the fish pond, Jiang Xuan began to dig clay and make pottery. On that day, he took a rattan basket and a bone skewer and walked to the side of the stream. He first used a bone shovel to remove the soil with more impurities on the surface, revealing the delicate gray-white clay below. He dug a whole basket of clay and then brought it to a flat ground next to the stream. He also found a relatively flat stone slab and placed a ball of clay on it, constantly beating and kneading it. Pop 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 pop. Clay has stickiness, just like dough, the more it is slapped, the stickier it becomes, and the smoother its surface becomes. Subsequently, Jiang Xuan used a bamboo slice to cut open the beaten clay, kneaded it into strips of mud, and then pinched a circular cake-shaped pottery jar base with his bare hands. Then, he began making pottery blocks. He first dipped some water on the base and began to stick these clay strips together, then stacked them one by one and kneaded them into the shape of a pottery jar. Not long after, a rough pottery jar with a diameter of about 20 centimeters and a height of about 30 centimeters was formed. After the rough billet was formed, it was not very round. Jiang Xuan sprinkled some water on the surface and tried to make it more round. Finally, he made a lid that matched the pottery jar, with a handle on the lid. Qi Xiao kept watching from the side. After Jiang Xuan finished the lid, she curiously asked, "Can we burn it into a pottery jar?" Actually, she really wants to say, "Is this too easy?" But I didn't say it out loud. Gaoting, Xiaoloch, and Nanqing also looked at Jiang Xuan because the process of making pottery jars was too simple, giving people a feeling that I could handle it. Jiang Xiandao said, "This is just a preliminary formation. After that, it needs to be left in a cool place for 7 or 8 days to naturally dry in the shade. Then, a clay kiln needs to be built, and the dried pottery blanks should be placed in the kiln and burned for a whole day. After cooling down, if there is no cracking, it can be considered a real pottery." Qi Shao and the 3 young men listened inexplicably, but they couldn't understand the words "yin gan," earth kiln, and cooling. Just now, the 3 teenagers who thought I was capable of cheating on me immediately put aside their contemptuous attitude. Red peony is not surprising. If pottery were so easy to make, the pottery of the deer tribe would not be so rare in the past. In fact, Qi Shao did not know that the deer tribe, including many other tribes, believed that pottery was precious because the soil they used to make pottery was random, and they did not specifically search for clay, nor did they go through the process of yin drying. They did not build a dedicated earthen kiln, and there was no standard for the temperature and time required for firing pottery. They had to rely on their own exploration, which resulted in a very low yield of fired pottery and made it appear precious. On the other hand, Jiang Xuan's memories left by his past life are the crystallization of wisdom that has been continuously improved and recorded by countless generations. Using this method to manufacture pottery naturally has a much higher success rate. In the end, Jiang Xuan made 2 thick rough pottery jars, 2 rough pottery pots, and 10 rough pottery bowls, and put them all in the corners of the bamboo house to dry in the shade. The reason for placing the bamboo house is that it is best not to see the wind or strong light when it is shady and dry. When it naturally emits moisture and dries, the ceramic body is not easily deformed. This step is very important. If the ceramic body is not dry enough, the water vapor contained in the clay will expand during firing, leading to the rupture of the pottery. By the time these pottery blanks were finished, it had already been half a day. Qi Shao and 3 teenagers watched for a while, then went hunting, fishing, and digging for plant tubers. Winter is approaching, and storing food is more important. Jiang Xuan ate some fish and grilled 2 pieces of yellow essence to eat. Huangjing is also one of the herbs used by tribal people, widely distributed in the mountains of the southern wilderness. Unlike the spicy wild ginger, huangjing is slightly sweet after being roasted and can be used to satisfy hunger. Tribal people often dig it up and eat it as food. After finishing huangjing, Jiang Xuan opened a bamboo tube containing a jar of solidified animal blood. He added some water to the tube, stirred it with bamboo slices, and then roasted it on charcoal fire. The green bamboo tube was burnt black, and the animal blood mixed with water inside was boiled to a boil. Jiang Xuan opened the bamboo tube and ate the animal blood inside bit by bit. Due to the lack of salt, consuming a large amount of mammalian meat and blood becomes an important way to supplement salt. Red Peony and others can all drink raw blood without changing their faces when killing prey, but Jiang Xuan found it a bit difficult to accept, so he used the method of adding water to a bamboo tube and cooked the animal blood before eating it, which was easier to accept. After finishing his meal, Jiang Xuan went to dig clay again, this time to build a clay kiln. In fact, ordinary soil can be used to build earthen kilns, but it is easy to crack when burning ordinary soil. If Jiang Xuan wants to use earthen kilns for a long time, it is better to use sticky civil engineering. There are several ways to build a clay kiln, and Jiang Xuan chose a horizontal flame kiln that is simple to build and can burn multiple pottery pieces at once. In front of the horizontal flame kiln is the stove door, in the middle is the furnace, and at the tail end is a cylindrical ventilation outlet standing at a 90-degree angle. When the stove door starts to burn, the air is heated and flows upwards, passing through a long furnace and being discharged through a cylindrical vent, similar to the principle of a rural stove, except that the lower part is a long strip. Jiang Xuan chose a relatively flat area on the open space next to the bamboo house, cleaned the ground, and then dug a lot of clay by the creek, using a rattan basket to carry good luck. Subsequently, he stacked the clay into a pile, poured some water into the middle with a bamboo tube, and continuously stepped on the clay with his feet. After stepping on the clay, both its viscosity and toughness will be greatly improved. After the clay was evenly trampled, he began to build the kiln. The process of building a kiln is very simple. First, a U-shaped mud wall is built, which is about half a meter high. Then, dense wooden sticks are placed on top of the mud wall, which can be topped with clay. Leave a gap at the end of the U-shaped mud wall, and then construct a cylindrical ventilation opening. The end of the ventilation opening is about twice as high as the main body of the kiln. After being built, it roughly looks like this. Finally, due to the relatively long furnace of the earth kiln, it is inconvenient to place ceramic billets and take finished pottery. A semi-circular notch needs to be cut on the side of the earth kiln. This gap will be resealed with mud after being placed in the pottery billet, and then opened after firing the pottery. After the earthen kiln was finished, the sun was almost setting. Jiang Xuan washed his hands and looked at the horizontal flame kiln he had built, feeling that there was no problem. He returned to the bamboo house satisfied. Red peony, hooked vine, stone loach, and southern star have returned. Today, they caught some fish, a few bamboo chickens, and dug up many edible taro, yellow essence, and sweet potatoes. For the next 7 days, Jiang Xuan, Shishan and others went hunting, fishing, digging for plant tubers every day, and storing food for the winter. During this period, they occasionally catch larger prey whose meat can be eaten or hung above the fire to dry. The fur is then peeled off and spread out to dry, used to make warm animal skin clothing and bedding. 7 days later, the pottery body was completely dried in the shade, and the earth kiln was almost dry after being exposed to wind and sun. Jiang Xuan carved a kiln and fired pottery. He carried half of the ceramic adobe to the side of the kiln, flipped it upside down from the opening on the side, and placed it one by one into the furnace of the kiln. Then, he blocked the gaps on the side of the kiln and sealed them with mud. He also brought a large amount of withered bamboo and dry firewood, piled them up next to the earthen kiln, and took fire from the fire pit in the bamboo house to start burning the kiln. Pipa pipa. In the earthen kiln, flames quickly ignited and the firepower was fierce. Hooking. At the cylindrical vent, the tail of the fire rises and falls, as if there is a blower below. The next step is to patiently wait. Jiang Xuan is guarding the fire here, while Qi Shao and others occasionally come to take a curious look. He guarded from day to night until the moon was hollow, and then stopped burning and went back to sleep. The temperature inside the earthen kiln is still very high, and it will take 1 night to slowly decrease. That night, Jiang Xuan had a beautiful dream. He dreamed that he had created a large tribe with a population of over 100,000, abundant resources, and a happy life. The next morning, Jiang Xuan couldn't wait to come to the side of the earthen kiln and touched it. There was still some warmth on the furnace wall. Let's start the kiln. Jiang Xuan rubbed his hands excitedly, and Red Peony and others ran over, waiting for Jiang Xuan to open the kiln. Jiang Xuan used a sharp wooden stick to reopen the notches on the side of the earthen kiln, revealing one brick red pottery after another. The first thing to take out is a thick pottery jar, which has no cracks and the lid is also intact. It was fired successfully. Dang 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 dang. Jiang Xuan tapped the side of the pottery jar with a wooden stick, and the jar made a crisp sound. The cooking is very good. We can use this pottery jar to make soup in the future. Jiang Xuan laughed heartily. His biggest goal in making pottery was to make soup, and now that goal has been achieved. Show me. Qi Shao took the pottery jar from Jiang Xuan's hand and it was very heavy. Although it was not particularly round, it was a real pottery. Xuan, you're so amazing. You made it in one go. Qishao carefully placed the pottery jar on the ground, praising Jiang Xuan from the bottom of her heart. Gaoting, Scallops, and Nanqing also cast admiring gazes at Jiang Xuan. Jiang Xuan took out another pottery basin and 5 pottery bowls from the furnace. The pottery bowl was also successfully fired, but 2 out of 5 were cracked and only 3 were intact. Jiang Xuan handed 3 pottery bowls to the 3 young men and said, "The pottery jars are used to cook soup, the pottery pots are used to hold vegetables, and each person has 1 pottery bowl. I'll give these 3 to you first." "Really? Xuan, you're really great." "Great, we have pottery now." The 3 teenagers were excitedly holding the pottery bowl, so excited that they couldn't express themselves. They wished they could kiss Jiang Xuan. Based on this firing experience, Jiang Xuan speculated that the thicker and heavier the pottery, the easier it may be to successfully fire, as it is less prone to cracking. On the contrary, pottery bowls, which are relatively thin, are prone to cracking, so only 3 out of 5 bowls were successfully burned. The success of the first batch of pottery gave Jiang Xuan great confidence. He also moved out the other half of the pottery from the bamboo house, put it in the earth kiln, sealed it, and ignited it again. This time was smoother, and a day later, he got another pottery jar, a pottery basin, and 4 pottery bowls, with only 1 bowl burning and cracking. After having pottery, Jiang Xuan finally no longer had to eat barbecue every day. He cooked a pot of fish soup in a new pottery jar, and when he drank the steaming fish soup, tears filled his eyes with excitement, and he felt a sense of happiness in his heart. He never thought before that even a sip of hot soup could make people feel happy. After firing the pottery, Jiang Xuan spent a few more days building 2 small bamboo houses, one built near the stream to the left of the bamboo house for bathing. The other room was built on the right side of the bamboo house, slightly away from the bamboo house. He dug a pit inside, put up bamboo rafts, and made it into a dry toilet. Taking a shower and going to the bathroom are all very private things. Jiang Xuan comes from the soul of later generations, which makes him unable to be as unrestrained as Gaoting and the others. Qishao was the first to accept the bathroom and toilet, and she likes this independent space. The 3 teenagers didn't have much aversion to this either. After these days of contact, they had developed admiration for Jiang Xuan. As long as what Jiang Xuan built is subconsciously considered good, they are willing to try and use it. Even chopsticks, they began to slowly accept it, because with the ceramic bowl, they could only use chopsticks to put hot dishes into their beloved ceramic bowl. Jiang Xuan is constantly improving his life in this world with his own efforts and influencing the people around him. Busy days always go by quickly. In the blink of an eye, autumn fades away, winter falls, and snowflakes float in the sky. In autumn, they captured a lot of prey. Some of the prey had thicker fur, which was peeled off, dried, and scraped off to make animal skin clothes to keep warm. At Jiang Xuan's suggestion, they added a large amount of plant ash to the water, then put the dried animal skins down and soaked them for 3 days and 3 nights. When these animal skins were washed clean again and dried, they were pleasantly surprised to find that the skins soaked in plant ash water were much softer than all the animal skins they had worn before. This discovery made them very happy, even soaking the old animal leather clothes they were wearing again, because if the animal leather clothes were too hard, they would easily get into the wind and not be warm enough. This winter, they have a house, a fire pit, food, soft animal skin clothes to wear, and even hot meat soup to drink. This is much better than when they were in the deer tribe before. The heavy snow grew heavier and the earth quickly became a vast expanse of white, with most animals hiding in their burrows until winter passed. After the snow, Jiang Xuan and others spent most of their time in the bamboo house because it was too cold outside. They had prepared enough food and firewood, so there was no need to go out and suffer. End of this chapter.